Coming. Welcome to the Unwashed Asses, episode 58, recorded Thursday, November 1st, 2018. So Halloween is coming past. There's a cat that's looking to jump on my desk because he's going to be annoying. What are you doing, Dixie? You gonna come up? No? Just gonna stare at me? Okay. And found myself on a somber note. Found that my photos had been backlogged. One thing about myself is I like to collect pictures. I think of it as my own private collection, a museum housed entirely within my computer. And part of having a museum is curating it and organizing the inbound photos, putting them in the galleries where they belong, and keeping things neat and tidy. And hadn't done that in a number of months, if not a year or more. So this morning went through and was going through like my camera roll and my saved pictures and screenshots, and putting things where they belonged. And it was an unintended walk down memory lane, because with each picture comes a story. Not only the emotions that I feel when looking at the picture, what it evokes inside me, but they act as timestamps for where I was in life when that particular picture spoke to me. And some of them no longer do. Like, they have no real meaning to me. I don't have much of an interest in them. They don't spark that interest any longer, and so they get deleted. They're rotated out of the collection, so to speak. But as I organized them, it was again an interesting trip down memory lane, in the sense of I remember where I was and what I was doing and who I was at that point in time, and it always brings up that sense of sadness, especially for one particular point in my life where, not to get into details, I thought I had everything that I wanted. And the memories are painful, but at the same time, they still bring a smile to my face. And seeing pictures and whatnot from that time period, it's bittersweet. It's like I'm sad it's gone, but happy it happened, type of thing. The quote of is it better to have loved and lost than to never loved at all? I'm definitely much happier now where I am in life. But again, it's like going back and looking with fondness at things that had happened. And a lot of really depressing shit too. Like, I guess one wing of my museum is quotes. I love, and I guess it stems back in high school. My art teacher, Deborah Scudder, she had always told me, like, words aren't art. Like, I would just like to write. I enjoy writing, so I'd just write and like try to convert it into art. She's like, words aren't art, and I always disagreed with that, but while they are, I was doing traditional art, like, pencils and oils and all that. And I was trying to bring over, like literature into the world of like visual art, and it wasn't working. And I was being stubborn, as I always am. And, taking it a bit too literally. Like, yeah, it's art, but that's not the kind of art that's going to get you a passing grade in this class. So part of this collection I have is quotes that come from authors or artists or just anonymous people on the internet. And they do it like, oh yeah, we've got an interesting font and there's a background. And it's usually just like a short couple words. Sometimes it's inspiring, but a lot of what I have is just ultra depressing. And I'm going through like, because I've had some of this stuff for years and I've never really had like a word art category, and it's just kind of been floating all over. And so as I'm scouring through, and just to kind of put it in perspective here, let me grab a file size. Properties here. like I have 13 gigs worth of just pictures of not only like pictures I've taken, but again, stuff I've pulled off the internet or scanned in for magazines and just stuff that I've found visually appealing. And so I'm scouring through all this, trying to get it organized and going through these quotes like, God damn, I was a depressed motherfucker. And like, I get it. I'd always on suicide watch for a long time, but it puts it in perspective when you're in a different spot in life and you're in a different position emotionally, and you can see what others were seeing. Like, okay, I get it, I'm an asshole and I bring everybody down, and it's almost cringy to the levels of sadness and pining I was feeling. And so I apologize to everybody. I must have been, I still am an awful individual, but back then, whew, oh boy. So it's definitely not how I expected to spend my morning, but here we are, and it was, I guess, fun. It's good to do every once in a while, and I guess it's the reason people keep scrapbooks, or like when family gets together and somebody breaks out, you usually have like a sewing tin or an old box, and it's just full of photos, and you're going through, and it's dredging up all these memories and whatnot, and that's exactly what I had this morning. And it's the reason you take pictures of your kids and of parties and friends, so when you are 80 and there's not a whole lot going on, you can spend that quiet, overcast morning going through photos and videos and listening to voices you probably won't hear again, and looking at faces that are, like my grandparents, they passed away, and getting an idea, like, here were my interests, and I have a lot of pictures of Dead Space because I was really into that series, and apparently I had a weird anime phase, and just kind of going through all that, and it's interesting. That's not why we're here. We're not here to talk about my photos, even though I did literally have it on the list and it's just been checked off. I guess kind of in the vein of pictures and museums. How do I put this? An observation I made recently. I go in a lot of different homes for my line of work. Usually 3 to 5 on average a day, sometimes more, sometimes less. But I get to see a wide variety of humanity, from the poorest of poor to the richest of rich, and everything in between. But there's something that I've noticed that is not a constant, but I'm really thirsty today. It's prevalent among women. I'd say 50s or older. I'm not really seeing it in the 40s crowd or younger. A lot of John Wayne porn. Now, when I say porn, I don't mean John Wayne sitting there laying back with his dick out and just like eyeing it up like, hey, cowgirl. More so, there's a lot of John Wayne memorabilia on these walls. Specifically, like the last house I was in, they had a lot of like the commemorative plates and calendars, and here comes Dexter. Come here, buddy. Come on. Is this too big for you to jump over? Let me get that out of the way. But yeah, pictures and plates and not wallpapers. The fuck are they? Posters. I forgot the word for posters. And just shit everywhere. A lot of John Wayne stuff. And I never really, I guess, looked at John Wayne as a sex symbol, but clearly that's what he is. Like, he is what women in this specific audience like desire. It's what they crave. The old rustic cowboy or the soldier of the Wild West. And I mean, I guess I get it. He's a good-looking fella, but there's something about that rugged manliness where when I see John Wayne in a house, it's not just a little John Wayne; it's a lot of John Wayne. Kind of like Elvis. Usually, when you see Elvis in a house, like Elvis memorabilia and whatnot, it's not a little bit of Elvis; it's a lot of Elvis. Where you've got, again, posters and clocks and calendars and commemorative plates and the albums and movies, and like you're either completely whole hog into Elvis or you're not really into him at all. And I'm getting a similar vibe from John Wayne. And let's do a little experiment here as you listen to me Google. Okay, so Daily Mail online did an article back in 2014. Let's see. John Wayne, the most unlikely Lothario in the West. A trio of exotic wives and affairs with secretaries and screen sirens. Oh, no, this is just about how many people he banged. Okay. Not what I was after, but clearly he was a desirable fella. The women liked him. They wanted to get in on that John Wayne goodness. And I don't really have much to add to it. It's more of just a passing observation. But I'd be curious to see, like, I know my own grandma, Nana, she was one of the ones that was enthralled with Elvis. And I'm trying to think of other, like, I guess, heartthrobs or stars that I've seen in similar vein, and nothing's really leaping to mind. If people are gonna have pictures up in their house, and it's usually like one star or something, it's usually either guys or older guys with, like, oh, I got the latest Snap-on calendar of pinup girls, or there's a girl in a bikini, just the stereotypical bullshit. But women don't have... It's not overtly sexual. The guys are always fully clothed. They're usually in heroic poses. And they're displaying all the traits of masculinity. Like, the one I think of is one plate with John Wayne, and he's walking through a desert, like straight on facing the camera, if there were one. There's a dog at his side. He's got dust and dirt all over him. He's got a gun slung over his shoulder. And he's kind of squinting from the hot sun beating down on him. And I guess it makes me realize there are different things that we're attracted to when it comes to sexual desire in a person. When I look at what, again, heterosexual women are desiring, or what they have up, what has captured their interest in a man, it's not that he has his shirt ripped off, or he's bulging with muscle, or he's got long flowing hair like the Harley Quinn romance novels, or the Danielle Steele that you see in your supermarket checkouts. It's usually a guy who's fully clothed, but he's displaying traits of overt masculinity and strength and prowess, and he's a guardian, he's a protector, he's a warrior. Whereas guys like, okay, let's get as little clothing on her, then we can still sell it in the general public without having to put a black bag over it. It's just interesting. I guess food for thought on that. I'm not smart enough to break down like, oh yeah, well here's the psychology of it and how it works. Especially when I literally just have the topic written down. John Wayne is old lady porn on my phone. Oh boy. Let's see, what else we got here? I'm just going to be jumping from tangent to tangent. A lot of stuff to cover. And I feel bad that I missed last week's episode, and I definitely did not follow through on the Halloween movie a week type of deal. I was so tired when I get home and then travel out to Colorado for a wedding. And so I just never got around to sitting and watching the movies, and I apologize for that, but I don't know, maybe we could still... would that be a good idea? Is that something we could do where we could fit in a movie a month? Like, we'll dedicate an episode to, like, one movie. I mean, there's not really enough feedback to justify it, where... you guys can always write in theunwashedasses at gmail.com. Again, theunwashedasses at gmail.com. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you want to write or want to cover. Because, let me see here. Oh, yeah, I'm just checking email. Nothing there. So, I don't know. Maybe we could do it. We could do one episode a month, but... at this point, I hate promising things because clearly I'm not following through on them. And let's not talk about that. Colorado was fun. Went out there. Rachel's cousin was getting married. So we were just going to fly out the day before, go to the wedding the next day, and then fly back the day after that. I had only been to Colorado once before, and it was to drive through. I was helping my uncle move out to California. And so we had a little Chevy S10 pickup, and we're just driving through. And my shift of the driving consisted of, like, the eastern portion of the state, so it's just desert and scrub and flatland, and pretty much just like Iowa and Kansas, except it's not green, it's all brown and shitty. And by the time we had hit the mountains, I was asleep. Now, when I say hit the mountains... granted, for hours beforehand, we had seen the Rockies coming up, and it just took ages and ages and ages to get there. And by the time I woke up, we were already through them. So, I don't know. I wasn't impressed, but again, we didn't really stop to see things. Like, we stopped the next day after we passed the mountains to crash at a hotel for a little while. But this was like my, I guess, first real opportunity to see the sights and take in the state. So we flew into Denver, and I had always heard horror stories about Denver's airport. Like, it's U-shaped, and it takes forever to get around, and it's super busy and crowded, and it's a pain in the ass to get around. And I didn't really feel that was necessarily the case. It's an airport like any other. Read the signs, and you can get around. But as a whole, let's just get this out of the way. Not super impressed with Colorado. And when I take a look at the stats and the listenership, I don't think we have any listeners in Colorado, so we're good enough to say that the state's kind of a shithole. Now, that being said, my experiences may have painted it in a poor light. We flew into Denver. We stayed in the Arvada Golden area, which is just an outskirt. But so the hotel we stayed in, while it was decent enough, definitely attracted, I guess, the wrong element. On a nightly basis, getting back to the hotel, there was usually a meth head or two hanging out about, looking super sketchy and whatnot, definitely strung out, usually trying to call us over and beckon us, and, you know, having spent enough time in large cities and dealing with the homeless population, it's like, I don't want to deal with this nonsense. So you ignore them and you keep walking, but the hotel itself and the area around it just reeked of pot. And I get it. Colorado's a legal state now, but it is so fucking annoying just walking everywhere and smelling pot. When it just hangs in the air ambiently, it drives me nuts. And again, it could have been the area, but the area itself wasn't all that bad. I don't know. It would be like upper middle class. Not bad at all. Everything's clean. There's decent restaurants. It wasn't an awful area, but it, again, still reeked of pot out there. Particularly when we went down to, I guess there's different districts or areas in the city of Denver proper, and the one we went to is called Rhino. Or I guess it's more of a hipstery area where it used to be industrial, and it's been reworked into a nice little eatery spot and local shops and things like that. But first and foremost, parking is just an absolute nightmare. We had to park, several blocks away we wanted to do Sushi Rama out there, which Sushi Rama I will praise. It was very, very good. The concept being it's a conveyor belt sushi restaurant. It only holds about 60 people. You get inside and they have a conveyor belt that brings the sushi plates through. And so the plates are color coded, and at the end of your meal, they'll take all the plates. Okay, you had like 3 pink plates. Those are $3 a piece. The yellows are $2. Blues are $1 a piece. And they'll tally it all up and give you your bill. And it was interesting because like when we typically go get sushi, you order 1 or 2 rolls. They're like $5 to $15 a piece, and the roll consists of like 6 or 7 pieces, but it's just one thing. Whereas here, each plate would have 2 pieces of sushi, but you could try a very wide variety of sushi. And so like they'd always have one plate that was empty except for a little place card and telling you what's coming up. And so everything would then be color coded for those plates. And then you'd have another card coming through and like, okay, well, this is this sushi. And then there's this sushi. And so you can and you have a menu in front of you. So it's like, okay, well, this one is California roll, and they'll tell you everything that's in that. And here's their dragon roll, and here's everything that's in that. So you have an idea and you're able to try it. And it was really, really good. And I typically try to stick pretty... So with restaurants, I'm afraid to try new things because I hate the idea of wasting money on something that I didn't really care for when I know I could have gotten something I really enjoyed. And with sushi being as expensive it is, I'm especially hesitant to try new things because I would hate to throw $15 at one roll and have it be, just not good. Whereas with this conveyor belt system, I'm able to try a wide variety without really having any penalty to it. And if I really like something, well, shit, I'll just wait for it to pass around again and grab another plate. So that was a super highlight, but this Rhino area is just so jam-packed with fucking hipsters. And I know it, hipsters are the bane of our existence. They are trash and filth and represent the very worst in humanity. But everything was so, like, it's all outdoor, like sidewalk eating, and they have their bars out there, and it's just packed sidewalks and man buns everywhere and people running around in rompers and those onesie pajamas, and it's like, the fuck are you doing with your life? You're all in your early 20s. You're driving me nuts. I'm old and I hate all of you. Get off my lawn. And I don't know. Maybe it is I'm just old and I hate everything. But as we're walking down, there's lots of gorgeous murals and beautiful artwork displayed everywhere. And it looks nice, but there's hipsters on the sidewalk talking loudly and drinking their beer and smoking their pot. And again, the stench of weed just hangs in the air, and I don't know. It did not jive with me at all. And I guess they're having a dry season out there, so everything was brown and so here's the thing. Colorado banks heavily on the imagery of the mountains. There's not one bit of advertising or anything prominent that doesn't have a backdrop of mountains on it. It's very iconic. I get it. You have this one stunning visual feature. You're going to rely on it heavily. But when you do a 360 of the horizon, the mountains only make up roughly a third, maybe a quarter of what you see. The rest is dried brush and scrub and desert, and I mean, I'll be the first to say it. I don't like desert. I don't like the browns and tans and hot sun. Like, you think of Mad Max and his post-apocalyptic desert wasteland. That is the absolute last thing I want to ever have to deal with. I don't like it. I don't like sand. It's coarse and it gets everywhere. it's not my ideal environment. And granted, when we did get into the mountains, like proper for the wedding, it was nice. It was gorgeous. You were in like the prime Colorado real estate. Like, okay, there's mountains and there's green pine trees and there's birds flitting about, and it's a nice, beautiful vista, a panorama, a feast for the eyes. But you get out of the mountains and it's flat, pancake territory where, you know, even in southern fucking Wisconsin, we at least have rolling hills and greenery and forests and prairie, and essentially we have more quantity over the quality that Colorado has. Don't get me wrong, the mountains are gorgeous. The snow-capped peaks are stunning to behold. But day after day, shit would get old. And what else got old was the fact that my nose was continually stuffed up and I got chronic nosebleeds out there. And it was probably the elevation. I didn't think it would affect me the way it did. And that was a question I always found myself asking, was, am I out of breath because I've made so many terrible life choices and I just ate another large meal? Or is it the elevation fucking with me? Like, sure, I'm fat, but I'm healthy, I'm strong, I have a very physically demanding job. I'm not as out of shape as, you know, I just have a nice layer of padding on everything. But yeah, I was not like struggling to breathe, but definitely winded, breathing heavier than I would have been, and just constantly just stuffed up, and the works were gummed up. But I don't know. The only other thing we really did was the Denver Zoo had what they called a Boo at the Zoo, where you could go to the zoo at night, and they had a bunch of Halloween decorations up, and they had a walk through, I guess, like their haunted forest, which it was like a half-hour wait to get in there, and it was kind of lackluster. We were in and out within like 7 minutes. It's kind of like when you go to the local pumpkin farm and they have a haunted house set up, or if you go through like the haunted corn maze or the haunted hay wagon ride, and they got mannequins that are kind of shittily put together, and they got a terrible rubber mask on them. They're like 50 feet out, and there's a light and a fog machine and some creepy music playing. That's kind of what they had. The coolest thing was they had some girl dressed up as a witch, and they had a voice modulator connected to the speakers around her, so it had this like cool, she's talking to you, but you hear the voice all around you, and it's got like some reverb and whatnot into it. And then they had a statue of a headless horseman, which, if you listen to the last year's Halloween specials, the headless horseman is very near and dear to my heart. So that was cool, but of course no animals are out. There was very minimal lighting, so it's very dark and not necessarily difficult to walk through, but you're definitely not seeing anything. The coolest is probably they just had a bunch of pumpkins carvings up of all the animals. But no, beyond that, I'm not super impressed with Colorado. Definitely would not go back to unless I had to. What else do we got here? What else do we got? What can we cover? So if you've been following the site at all, over at zeroand09.com, zeroand09.com, not only where we post the shows, but other things. So at the beginning of the month, I decided I wanted to try something else. I had been, taking photos, especially like Amsterdam and Germany, and when I post them like Facebook and whatnot. And this is going to sound very self-serving and like, oh, you don't have a good sample size for the data you're pulling here. You're like, oh yeah, you take really good photos. And I had always had like a very casual, like barely an interest, passing interest in photography, because there's so much to it, and it is a delicate and intricate art where, again, you have professional photographers, and they dedicate their lives to honing this craft. And now that we've brought in computers and whatnot, and you're doing photo touch-ups, and you have all the lenses, and you have to worry about light balance, and like even on our phones, there are a dozen settings. I have no idea what they do. And so I wanted to try and, take that a bit further. Like let's foster an interest and see if we can turn something of it. Not necessarily to make money, but see if I can develop myself. And, part of what I've been trying to do this year is make more creative content and be more active in that space. Because when I look at my website, I've been running it for at least this incarnation of it over 10 years now. And I look at the post count and it's dismal. It's terrible. I don't put up a lot of content. And that aggravates me because I have all of this bubbling up inside me and I want to push it out instead of being lazy and playing video games all the time. So I said, okay, well, one thing I can do is I can do one photo a day. If I can take one picture of something I find visually stimulating, something interesting, and put it up, and I can learn the tools as far as lighting and color correction and things like that, I can not only learn how to do this one thing better, but it allows me to create and update on a regular basis and keep my mind focused towards creating this content. So I've done really, really well. I don't post every day, but I am definitely taking the photo every day and getting it uploaded. And it's been interesting because it challenges me to see, not necessarily the world in a different way, but to look for something I find not necessarily beautiful, but interesting. And it kind of breaks me out of that rut of where you just kind of soldier through every day. You wake up, you brush your teeth, you eat breakfast, you go to work, you slog through the day, you come home, you eat again, and then you fall asleep, rinse and repeat 4 to 5 times a week. And the only time that we really get to live or get out or do things that we enjoy are the weekend, at least in my case, because I work so late. But I wanted to find a way to break that, to where even if I am at work, I'm looking for something that catches my eye, something that is, I think, not necessarily would benefit other people, but they might find interesting too. And so that's where this photo a day series came about, and I've been enjoying it. I throw one up on Twitter, throw one up on the site, just tinker around a little bit, and there we go. So I feel like I'm doing all this shit rapid fire and just throwing it out at you, but I don't have much substance to it. It's we're doing quantity over quality, much like the southern Wisconsin, and I don't know. Maybe I'm being too critical, being too hard on myself, overthinking things. But if you have tips or anything you've picked up while doing anything photography related, please let me know, because I'm very much a beginner at this. It's mostly just adjusting things until I like the way it looks, but I could be doing things totally wrong, where things aren't centered properly, or I'm not doing the focus correct on the item that I don't even know what the fuck I'm saying. And that's where I'm at. I'm trying to learn something new. And I'm reaching out to you, dear listener. Help me. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. My only hope. And hope's not something I have. Hope is something that has left me now that we've signed up for a 5K. Really, well, not necessarily making an effort, but it's been at the forethought of, all right, this is the year that we're going to get healthy, we're going to lose weight and get back in shape and look good and feel good. And done better this year than I have past years by far, and it's mostly been at Rachel's urging. I don't like working out. I hate it. It's a terrible experience. I don't like eating. I don't eat terrible. I eat my packed lunch. I eat dinner at home. It mostly was just cutting down on fast food. Especially when I lived alone, it was it was my number one pitfall. Like, oh, well, I live in the middle of bumfuck nowhere. I don't want to make, my hungry man meal when I get home. Let me just hit up a drive-thru, and then I'll eat that on the way home. It was easy, but it drained the bank account, made me fat, and now the bane of my existence is sugary drinks. So it's making conscious life, making conscious changes and effort to change habits. So we definitely don't eat out near as much as we used to. It's a lot of home cooked meals, a lot of packed lunch, and it's good. I definitely feel better, and now when I do have fast food, I notice the difference where I feel like a fat piece of shit and I feel miserable after eating it, which I guess is the good thing. It's what you want. But sugary drinks are still I dig them. God damn it. Forgot to turn off the old work phone. Sorry about that. But no, I'm saying a lot and it's pissing me off. So sugary drinks, I am a huge fan of the Starbucks Frappuccinos or their double shots. So you get the vanilla Frappuccino in the glass bottle, or you get the double shot in the can. Love them. Absolutely love them. They are my favorite things ever. Friday nights, for Friday Night Smite, my go-to is usually Monster energy drinks. It tastes just like Red Bull. It is about half the price, and you get more of it. And I enjoy the flavor. So usually get one of those at least a week. Sometimes more because, again, I come home and I'm usually asleep by 9. Not by choice, but because I'm just so exhausted and I fall asleep on the couch. So I'm like, all right, well, I want to stay up and play some games. Let me get a Monster. Or let me get some Mountain Dew. And I need to cut that shit out. So we've been trying coffee. I finally fucking grew up at 33. Coffee. And I guess the foray was the Starbucks drinks. Okay, I really enjoy these. I like the Frappuccino I get at Starbucks proper now, which definitely has a stronger coffee flavor. Let's get a coffee maker. Let's see if we can cut out the super sweet, super sugary drinks and just replace it, say, with coffee. And I'm happy to say that over the past 2-3 weeks, Rachel is able to find a concoction that I am able to not only stomach, but actually enjoy. I don't know exactly what she puts into it. I know we use the Starbucks French vanilla grounds. There's just a generic creamer in there, and I think we do 1 pack of stevia. But it doesn't have that same yum yum yum, I'm gonna drink this down, but it tastes good. And I notice I drink it in a much different fashion where, though the Starbucks drink proper, I would just pound it down because it tasted so good. And that's what I wanted. I wanted the flavor, not necessarily the effect of the caffeine, but I like the taste so much. And so I'm just constantly drinking it down. It's smooth, it's creamy. It is the adult version of chocolate milk to me. I love it so much. Whereas actual coffee, it's bitter. It tastes good, but not yum yum good. I'm nursing coffee a lot more than I would anything else. And I assume this is normal for coffee. I don't see coffee drinkers I got my black coffee, let me just pound this fucker down, and that's it. But they're nursing it. And whereas, one Starbucks drink, I would be done within 10 minutes. My 1 mug of coffee, I, not intentionally, but just it's now the natural way I drink it, it will last me until I'm ready for lunch. It gets me through the entire morning. And it's nice because now I am addicted to the caffeine and I need it in the morning. Where the days that I don't have coffee, I'm dragging ass, especially in the afternoon. I'm a miserable piece of shit, which isn't good. I should break myself off of it. But the way I look at it is we all have to have something. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. Just let me have caffeine. Is it so much to ask? Is it? Is it so much to ask? So there's a couple other recipes with it we're going to try. But I'm happy to say at least I was able to cut out like pop or soda or whatever you call it near entirely. I think the only real bad thing I still drink it would be the Monster, because like pound for pound, I can't say that coffee gives me the same effect as the Monster because I do consume the Monster more quickly. And all it has to do is keep me up for 3 hours. That's it. And I could do the 5-hour energy, but I did those years ago and they taste awful. And you don't get the same joy out of it. It's just like doing, like, let me do a bump of cocaine here just so I can get going. Like, there's no pleasure in the act. You're just doing it purely for the drug at that point. Oh, man. What else we got here? What can we go through? We did the 5K. Oh, it all leads back to the 5K. So, yeah. Part of being the healthy is working out. And so she's been waking me up in the morning like, okay, get your ass out of bed, go to the gym, and been doing it, but I guess with nothing to really look forward to, because working out, it is a long, drawn-out process. You don't really see the results until they are actually there. It's a very slow process. You don't get that immediate gratification like, oh yeah, I ran this dungeon and I got this piece of loot. It's going to take you weeks and months to actually see any kind of result. So it's discouraging. It's disheartening. It's not motivating. And that's where the determination and discipline comes in, which I lack. So we signed up for a 5K. So at this point, I either have to get in shape and be able to run this fucking thing without dying, or we just wasted money on something. And they already gave us the mug for signing up, and there's a t-shirt on the way, so I best get my fat ass in shape. And I'd like to think, guess what? So 5K is a little over 3 miles. I can still do 3 miles. Like, I can do a mile, no problem. Cross country was 2 miles. I could fucking jog, like at least half-ass jog 3 miles. I'm not going to place well, but I can do it. And that's the thing. I'd like to keep up a nice even pace for 3 miles. And if I'm doing my cardio at least 2 days a week and then doing the strength training, I should be able to. So we'll see. I think it's in the tail end of November, I think. So updates will come. What else do we got? So, last week I was on vacation. I had taken the week off because, one, we were going to Colorado for the wedding, and said, okay, well, this will be prime time. I'll go ahead and take some vacation time with my boy, have him for the week. And so it's fun. It's sad to say, but it's the longest, continuous streak I've had with him since his mother and I split. So it was interesting to see kind of it's not a realistic painting, but what day-to-day life might have been like. I understand it's vacation and we're just doing fun stuff every day and going to the pumpkin patch and museums and playing video games. So it's not like, okay, I went to work and came home. What do you have for homework? Is it done? Did you brush your teeth? Did you do your chores and things like that? But it was a long, uninterrupted streak of, one-on-one time with him, which, again, I've not really had past weekends. And so it was, kind of like my tour down memory lane with the photo museum. It brought me back to the time, like before his mom and I had split, when he was just a baby, and every day I'd come home and I'd get to play with my son. And he's growing up so fast, and now he's developing these interests, and this is where like the old man is going to come out again. There are things that I don't like and don't care for, not about him or his personality, but about interests that he's developed or things that he's seeing. So, and I'm not going to point fingers or cast blame, but he likes to watch YouTube. And so he has a Kindle at home. He watches stuff on my tablet, except like when he's over here, I use like the YouTube Kids app, and I monitor what he watches, and I get the status reports, like with when he plays on the Xbox. He's part of the Microsoft family, and I have parental controls on, and I get a weekly status report, like here's what he played, here's how long he played, if he was on an app, here's what he watched, and things like that. And I guess at some point in time, he had watched, not while he was here, but he had watched some scary stuff, some spooky stuff. And a lot of what he watches on YouTube, much to my, begrudgingly, he likes watching like Let's Play videos, like people playing Minecraft or Roblox, or those shitty little toy review things. And I get it. Like, I understand. There's a ton of people that like watching other people play video games. I'm not one of them. I don't get it. I don't understand it, despite streaming myself. I don't understand it. I don't get it. It's a confusing new world for me. But a few of the things he got into were scary games, and again, I can understand it because I like spookier things. I like the macabre and the horrific. But he's only 4. He's too young for this type of thing, and so a couple of things he had been exposed to were mobile games, like this one called Granny, where it's super shitty graphics. It's a first-person survival horror, kind of akin to something like Amnesia or Outlast, where you're in the home of this old woman named Granny, and the objective of the game is to find keys to get past like the locks on the front door and escape the house. Meanwhile, Granny is chasing you throughout the house with like a bat, and she'll catch you and beat you over the head with it. So you can hide like under beds or in dressers and avoid her. And it's fairly intense. And not at all suited right for a 4-year-old. Like, when I look at the trailers and gameplay videos, like, who the fuck lets you watch this? And I don't know if it was one of his older sisters or if he just like stumbled across it, because you know how like YouTube can get you down a rabbit hole, like, oh, you watch this video, you might like this video, and he just happened to click on it and it stuck with him. It resonated to the point where he would have nightmares for weeks. And one of the other things that he got into in a very similar vein was a game called Bendy and the Ink Machine. And this is where I sound like an old man, because as I started like investigating what this thing was, like, oh yeah, this is actually kind of popular. You go to like toy stores and whatnot, and I noticed like a lot of these indie developers, like the Five Nights at Freddy's and Slither.io and stuff like this, while they're not necessarily AAA or gigantic, they're popular and they're getting deals. So things like toys and stuffed animals and Halloween costumes, all this shit's out there, and Bendy is no different. The concept for Bendy, though, is, again, it's a first-person survival horror. The idea is you are in a place being chased by things and have to escape. Except it is focused primarily, like the design of it is like a 1930s-esque cartoon, similar to like Cuphead. Everything's hand-drawn. You're an animator that's gone back to this studio, and you find out that the guy who ran the place got into some really weird occult stuff. and you have the cartoon characters running around. They're now alive. Some of them are being cloned and used as like organ harvests, and there's a lot of like satanic or demonic stuff referenced. And while it's not like inherently gory because it's very cartoony, it's definitely dark and fucked up. And so I had downloaded, like, because the way this game is structured is it's episodic. So kind of like the Telltale games, if you're familiar with those. Usually the first episode is free. It's your taste. It's your dealer giving you, like, oh, the first one's free. And then you pay $5 an episode after that. So I downloaded it. I watched a few trailers. Like, okay, it doesn't look awful. We'll try it. So, sat my kid on my knee and like, okay, well, let's play through this together. And it wasn't terrible. I'm not going to do like a game review on it, but at least the first episode wasn't awful. The worst we had was this goofy looking character strapped to a table. His chest was open. There were a couple of cartoony ribs sticking out. And while like I understand, like, the way I view it, like, oh yeah, this is some super dark, gruesome shit. Like, this character has been strapped to a table, his organs have been harvested, and there's some fucked up shit going on here. But when I think back to like Looney Tunes and whatnot, there were similar things with characters being blown up or tied onto railroad tracks, and you would see like the ribs and you play them like a xylophone. So I don't know if I'm being like overprotective parent with it, but like, oh yeah, I don't know that you're like ready for something like this. But when I process it logically, it's like I can't really find an argument against it. It's just like, I feel wrong about it, but should I? Like, it comes back to the overthinking. Like, is it really okay, or am I overthinking this here? So I don't know. It's one of those things, like, even with the Telltale Minecraft series, like, it was getting into stuff where it's like, oh yeah, the one episode where you had some guy wearing a pumpkin mask and he's killing off other characters in the games. Like, this is some dark, twisted shit. And I understand it's geared towards a little bit of an older audience, but I, like many parents, and this is where I feel out of touch with the youth and games, and like, that's what's upsetting, is like, games are my area. This is what I know, and now where there's so much stuff out there and I'm not keeping up on it, and I have a kid who's getting into stuff that I don't understand, and fuck. I'm an old man now, so I don't know. I think we'll get the second episode this weekend. We'll play through it and we'll see. It's interesting because he's getting scared and jumped, and I'm trying to use it as a way of showing him, like, well, it's okay, don't be scared. Like, the way I got over my fears was, sure, there are monsters and things walking around, but I'm the bigger, scarier monster. I'm the thing that is going to eventually kill them and, eat them and destroy them. I don't know. It worked for me, and I'm because he's a very afraid little kid. A lot of stuff gets to him, and I don't want him to have to experience that. Like, I want to make him not necessarily stronger, but make him be able to be brave despite being afraid. Like, it's okay to be scared, but if you can conquer that fear and be brave and courageous despite it, then you're much better. You're in a much better place going forward. So it's a good learning experience, I guess. So we covered a lot today. We got through we're coming on 55 minutes here. Thank you for listening. If you want to write the show with comments, suggestions, just you want to yell at me because I let my kid play a scary game, write the show, theunwashedasses@gmail.com. Again, theunwashedasses@gmail.com. We're back on iTunes. I was able to do some black voodoo, and we got the show back on iTunes. So again, now we have iTunes, Spotify, Google Play Music, Stitcher, really anywhere you can get show podcasts, SoundCloud, Pocket Cast, you can get the show. If there's another place you want it, let me know. Write the show. Again, theunwashedasses@gmail.com. And if you want to keep the show running, head over to patreon.com/0and09. Pitch in $1 or $2. That's all I ask. It keeps things going, lets me know you enjoy the content I'm putting out. And, we unlock new tiers, new rewards. If we can fully fund the show, well, we might get another show. If we can hit like $100 goal, I think that one's still up. We'll go to a local art museum. We'll review local, not local. We'll go to an art museum. We'll review modern art. Things like that. But otherwise, we'll be back sometime next week and covering...